If you follow this channel for any real length of time, you know my crazy affinity for this camera. So after almost exactly 2 years of use, what are my thoughts? How has it held up? And does it live up to the hype? Especially because these things are so hard to come by right now that they're often going for more than the regular MSRP. So today we are checking out all of the reasons why I love and some of the reasons why I don't so much love the Fujifilm X100V. Now this video isn't sponsored, but is supported by you all just liking and watching this video, as well as clicking some of those links below. If you make purchases through any of that kind of stuff, I get like really small kickbacks. And one of those kickbacks is through my friend Todd at Clever Supply Co. They, at my begging and request, have finally made these really thin, the skinny version of their very popular peak straps. They've made a skinny version for a long time, but I've always wanted to get one with the peak design stuff on it as well, because a lens and a camera like this doesn't need a thick strap. It just needs a really minimal setup here. So I've convinced Todd to start making these, which works especially well for these little Fujifilm cameras and all the other stuff that I use, the LEICAs. I've even used these on my Hasselblad, and it just works great. So if you're interested, you can check out the link below and use the code BENJ. I don't know what the discount is exactly, but it'll be in the description. And it'll also support my friend Todd, who makes these by hand, as well as gives me a few bucks as well. So first of all, this camera is obviously very small, compact. It weighs 478 grams, which is just a little bit over a pound, I think. Very lightweight, and that includes the batteries and everything. So as a small camera that you can kind of take anywhere, fantastic. Obviously, it's also kind of has that rangefinder, offset, viewfinder aesthetic. While it is not a coincident rangefinder like a LEICA is, it does have the offset viewfinder, which allows you to be able to look with another eye elsewhere and kind of see your surroundings. It also is one of those things where if you are photographing a subject in particular, instead of having the camera completely covered up your face or completely covering your face, the offset viewfinder allows half of your face to be seen so people can see your facial expressions, your mannerisms, all that kind of stuff, which I find is a incredibly underrated thing, because when I'm photographing people, I am often trying to sort of mirror what I am wanting out of a client or a couple or my kids or whatever. So if I want them smiling, I'll be smiling. If I want them serious, I'll be serious. You know, all those different things. And if you have a camera directly in front of your face, you're not gonna see that. But if you have the camera offset, it's just one of those things that ends up being a really good way to break down potential barriers between yourself and a subject. The other thing is obviously it looks retro in a way that has some modern features, but also is very clearly reminiscent of a older film camera, which is also a thing that is going to be both stylistically something I really love carrying around and looking at. It also makes it something that I want to pick up and use. And also it is another one of those things that's a little bit more disarming to a subject, because when you pull up a little camera like this versus a normal DSLR mirrorless whatever camera, there's just something about the aesthetic and the overall feel and everything like that of that that is really good. I will also say that the fact that it has a really good optical viewfinder, as well as an EVF that is actually an OLED EVF as well, is something that, you know, it's not the best EVF in the world. It's not like crazy sharp, but it more than does the job. And I really do love the fact that it does have the OVF, especially when I'm just kind of like walking around a city or something like that, I often will change it to the OVF. Another thing that is pretty helpful about this is just the little tilt screen here. Being able to pop this down like this and just make it flat, or even just use it sort of as a waist level finder. Cool little feature that's not like crazy and it doesn't break the whole system of this, but having just that little bit of a tilt screen is super helpful and I really enjoy it. Now, I guess while we're on the body, I'll add that every camera nowadays should have USB-C. This does, obviously. So the fact that I can just plug this in as if it's just like a phone or something like that, I could get away with only having one battery if I can, you know, plug it in and charge it throughout the day or whatever. Super helpful feature, and again, something that every camera should have. As we're going throughout the body as well, the camera can be weather resistant. It's not like it's going to survive like just being dropped in water. But if you unscrew this little guy and then add a filter by getting a filter adapter, a lot of people will buy a filter and then reverse mount it on here, and then the camera won't be able to focus. Don't do that. Buy a filter adapter. You don't have to buy the official X100 one. There's plenty of other ones out there that you can purchase. I'll leave links below to the ones that are cheap on Amazon. In doing that, shoving just like a regular UV filter or something creative like a Cinebloom or something will make this so that it can survive out in the rain. So again, for a personal tool that you're gonna be taking out and around and maybe to trips or kids' sports games or whatever, another really, really handy feature about this camera. Now to getting into the nuts and bolts, having a 35mm equivalent lens with an f2 aperture in this small of a form factor, just like the main draw or one of the main draws to this camera. I would love it if it was faster, but for the size, man, if I'm gonna have just one lens for every single thing, I could take portraits with a 35, I can shoot wide enough that I can get a lot of the context of things with 35. There is just so much that you can do with a 35mm equivalent focal length. And going down to f2 brings in enough light that is going to be good in low light. It's also going to be able to separate a subject from the background well enough. It's just a great little camera in all of those ways. And I think Fujifilm was very specific in putting that particular lens in, and it is the basically right decision for the vast majority of people. I miss my old heroes. I had to give them all away. My old heroes, yeah, yeah. God, I wish they could have stayed. 'Cause it turns out that the hardest part of growing up's not getting old. Just learning how the real world goes. I miss my old, I miss my old, I miss my old heroes. I miss how it was when we were young. I miss back before I understood all the ways that life will break your heart. Before I knew that's what they call growing up. The other little bonus thing about this is it has a built-in ND filter. So The way that Fujifilm cameras work in terms of dynamic range with their JPEGs is that they will give you the most dynamic range if you shoot at ISO 640, which is kind of high up there. But if you enable the ND filter, that allows you to shoot at, you know, shutter speeds and everything like that that are reasonable for a camera like this. It also gives you the ability to shoot much more manageable video on this thing. There's a lot of reasons why it's not a great video camera, but in a pinch, this camera does work as a video camera and it puts out a really great image actually. And the ND filter definitely helps to make a more cinematic looking video because of that. Another thing is the sensor and image quality. 26 megapixels for an everyday type of camera like this is fantastic. There are very rarely, if ever, I guess, situations where I need more than 26 megapixels. That's the thing, is like everything about this camera just ends up being something that just works for the vast majority of people. I don't think any of it is like the best in the world of anything really. It's a little bit bigger than some of the other cameras. It's smaller than a lot of cameras. It's not as fast as some lenses. It's faster than, it's just like an all around amazing camera. And that's obviously what they have designed it to be. Another thing that's pretty simple though is just the idea that it does a really, really good job, a lot better of a job than many of my other cameras of just working in auto mode. I use it with auto shutter speed, auto ISO, and then I basically run it in the aperture priority by setting it to f2, kind of set it, forget it kind of thing, unless I'm doing some sort of landscapes. I do really love how the whole exposure triangle is very easily controlled within this pull-up dial for the ISO, the regular dial here, and then the aperture. So everything just in that little package, fantastic. I also love that it is just such a well-loved camera that there are a ton of other accessories for it, whether it be that 28mm equivalent wide conversion lens adapter, or all of the lens hoods and grips and things like that. It's just a well thought out system that a lot of people have put in a lot of effort to, which makes owning a camera like this a little bit of fun too, because you can sort of customize it into what you love. Now that we've gone over all of the many, many, many things that I really love about this camera, here are the few that I don't love as much. And again, I'm gonna be biased because I do love this camera a lot, but here are the things to, I guess, look out for and maybe know that exist, because many of the reviews are so glowing that you might run into some of these things and be slightly annoyed by them. So first of all, the flash is like sort of just like a neutral thing. I'm not gonna complain about it too much because there is a flash, but it's also like this tiny little strip here. It's not very big, it's not that powerful, but it's better than nothing. So I would rather have a flash than not have one. The other annoying thing is if you use any sort of lens hood at all, it's going to block part of the flash, which is also sort of annoying. It's not bad, it's not good. It's just one of those like, I'm glad that it has it. I feel like it could be better, but I'm glad that we have one. Another issue that I found out a few months ago was that I was just doing everything manually and sticking the shutter speed at 1/4000th of a second. And when you do that, you see that the image, the bokeh and everything changes. Basically just avoid that shutter speed if you can. Use the ND filter and you won't have this weird like movement going across the bokeh of your images. So again, not that huge of a deal. Another thing is that if you have any Fuji camera, the Fujifilm app, it just is awful. I really wish that this had a better way of offloading things and connecting to an app. Not saying that it's any worse than any other company's apps, because they all kind of suck, but it also just sucks. So it's kind of requiring you to have more hardware. So if you do want to buy this camera, most likely you're going to want to have some sort of other device than just hoping that an app works on this. So the battery life also is pretty garbage. Even on their site, it rates the battery at, I think like 350 photos. And obviously you can change some of that by changing how you're using the electronics and the viewfinders and the screens and all that kind of stuff. If you're gonna go out, you're gonna need multiple batteries, most likely, or a power bank that you're going to be able to, you know, charge it via the USB-C. The other thing is a lot of people talk about like, oh, it must be really fun to manual focus this thing. No. It's not fun to manual focus this lens. It's like totally electronic, and it just doesn't give you that same experience of just any camera manual focusing anything. I definitely would not recommend wanting to manually focus this much for anything other than, yeah, doing street photography and zone focus, that kind of thing. It also has amazing video, but a 35mm equivalent with no IBIS or anything like that on a lightweight body like this is going to give you really, really kind of janky, wobbly footage. It also will overheat very, very quickly because it is weather resistant. So I think it only gives you like 10 minutes of record time or something like that. So again, something that you could use in a pinch, but if you wanted to buy this and hopefully it could be like your all-in-one, you could use it for YouTube videos as well as your personal street photography thing, whatever. It could, but I could just not have any video features in this at all and be more than happy. So I would not buy this as a video camera at all, unless you're just using it for very, very small clips on a tripod, then it could work. And then the last thing is just the fact that, like everything else in the world, these are just hard to come by right now. They're always back ordered. They're always out of stock. The camera's been out for like 2 years plus. I just checked again on Moment and B&H, and they're just not available anywhere. So a $1,400 camera is often going for $1,600 to $2,000. It just seems like a lot to have to shell out. That being said, it's still worth it to me because of how useful it is. It's just a great backup, a perfect little camera that I can bring anywhere. There's just so many things to love about this camera, and the only real huge downside to it at the current moment is just that it's so popular. If you want to get one today, you're probably gonna have to go on eBay or something and buy it at a markup, which kind of sucks. So if I were you, I would go on and just make pre-orders at Moment, B&H, and then once one of them comes up, cancel the other ones. And you'll get one for a little bit less, but if you're impatient or have something that you actually need it for, like a trip, buying it and spending the extra little bit of money is going to be about the difference between you renting one for that time anyway. Even at the markup, it's crazy to think, but I do think it's still worth the money because it's so small, it's such high quality, it does so many amazing things. It's one of those cameras that is just special. It's just a camera that I think everyone should have if they love photography, love to take photos, and can stomach the cost. So thanks so much for watching. Again, I'll put links to all the things that I use for this, as well as the straps, as well as the hoods and the conversion lenses, all that good stuff. If you liked how the photos were processed in this video, those are all done with my Cascade presets that work obviously amazing with this. You can find those in the links down below. And if you want to see more, I've done a ton of videos on the X100V, so you can see those in the description down below as well and up here. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.